Hi, guys. How we doing? Ladies? Wow. Microphone, Ross? Okay. Can you hear me?
Joe, can you just talk about the process that you've seen from D. Hall as he's tried to work his way back, and what kind of role do
D. Hall?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he, to start with, he was great for us in the off season. Really couldn't do anything. Did some stuff individually and things like that, but we kept him out of OTAs. But I just loved his. It was my first time around him, but I really loved his passion, and he was into it. He was coaching the young guys. And for me, never being around a guy, you never know how a veteran's going to ask or how a veteran's going to act. And he was great. I mean, he was positive. We get to training camp. We had a practice plan with him. I think you always got to do that anytime that you have a guy that's injured. And then he, hurts the groin. Then he hurt his toe. But the thing I love about him is that he kept battling through it. And he's been great. He's a true professional, which has been great to see.
What kind of expectations do you have for him? Obviously, he looks like he'll start opposite there, but what do you think he's capable of?
Oh, I mean, I'm greedy. I have high expectations of all our guys. If you make the 53-man roster, I think expectations are high. So, and I think any player that's worth anything would be, he'd be upset if we didn't have high expectations for him. So, I think he's in a good place right now, and he's having fun. D. Hall just wants to play football. That's all he wants to do. So, and he's been able to do that the last couple of weeks. So he's got a big smile on his face.
Tackling is something that's been an issue here in the past. Is that something you felt particularly compelled to emphasize this offseason? Where do you feel you guys are at on that entering this first game?
Yeah, I think tackling is probably it's a major issue in the NFL right now, just because of the ways the rules are now. You really can't, from the time you play your last game, last year on December 29th or whenever it was, you really don't tackle anybody until, damn near the first preseason game. So you can emphasize it, you can talk about it, you can drill it, but until you actually go out and tackle a dude, that's the only true way to do it. And you don't do that really technically until preseason games. You might have some live situations for guys in training camp, but you usually do that with the third group. You never do that with the first or second group. So the first time that veterans really get a chance to go tackle is the preseason. So I think everyone has to fight through that. It's from a coach's standpoint, it's frustrating. Because you want to be able to. In college you have spring ball, you have Saturday scrimmages where you go out and tackle. NFL you don't have that. So, but we try to create drills for guys in the off season. That 9-week period when we're out on the field. You try to be as creative as possible, but there's no way to create a real tackle unless going out and tackling a guy, and you can't do that until the preseason.
Joe, I got two questions, unrelated, but I figure I'd get them out anyway. First is on Preston Smith, the strides you've seen him make over the last couple of weeks. Then two, with the secondary, one thing we talked about a couple of weeks ago is about the communication. Sure. They haven't played a lot together. I'm curious where that is at right now.
Well, Preston, I'm sure he'd tell you if you asked him. I'm up his butt every second of every day because he's a talented kid. He really is. But like most rookies, they don't get it. And one day he might have it and think he has it, and the next day he show up and you gotta coerce him to get going. But Preston's been typical rookie progress. But I think OTAs was good. I think training camp was good. I think he did some things in the preseason, but he's still a young player. But I think he's a kid that's I'm very excited about. He's got a great skill set. He's a big man. You don't realize. You walk by him and you're like, oh, what is he? 245, 250. I mean, he's 270 pounds. So he's a big athletic kid that is just tipping the surface, I think, of how good he can be. And the secondary, I think that's always when you come in with a new system. I don't think it's just excluded to the secondary. I think every group, the D-line, the linebackers. The defensive football is about communication. It's about 11 guys being on the same page all the time, because you can have 9 or 10 guys. If one guy's off, there's a kink in the armor. But if all 11 guys are on the same page, communicating, playing as one, good things can happen. And especially in the back end. If the D linemen screw up, shoot, the linebackers can cover for them. The linebackers screw up, the DBs. But if a DB screws up, there's no one behind you. So it's vital for every position to be able to communicate and be on the same page, but those guys especially.
Back to that tackling issue, because one thing kind of struck me you said there. Do you, without those repetitions, without that ability to get guys better at it, I guess, just because of the time constraints and the CBA, is it more pressure on you guys as a staff and scouting front office to identify guys who are just naturally good tacklers, who are just...
Oh, sure. And, and when you get to this level that these guys are at, these guys are tacklers. I mean, you can't make it to this level. You can't make it to a 53-man roster and not be a good tackler, I just think that it's like I said before, you really have to, it's really forced us to be creative because you can't go out and tackle. You have to, you have to be creative. You have to tackle medicine balls, and you have to talk about vice leverage, and you have to talk about proper shoulder and things like that. And you have to constantly talk about it, especially in the off season, because you physically can't do it. So, but I think most guys, and it is something that, obviously it starts with Scott and his crew in the evaluation process, whether it's a draft eligible guy or a free agent. You're always looking at what kind of tackler he is. And most of the time, these guys, they wouldn't be to this level if they couldn't tackle.
You brought in a bunch of new players, got a new scheme, a really different kind of scheme for a year. How have you felt things have come together? I mean, now's the first test is on Sunday. How do you feel things have come together?
I think it's it's obviously a progression like anything. You go through the 9 weeks off season. You get the OTAs. It's a building process. Every day is better. You hope you build and stack a block on top of each other every day. Training camp's a process. We kind of broke it down into phases. We had the off season, we had training camp, and then we had the preseason. So now we're moving into another phase. But each progression of each phase, I think I've been satisfied with. Now ultimately, none of those other phases matter. Now we gotta go to the phase of playing games and winning games. But the progression, I like what we've been able to do.
Coach, DeShawn Goldson, he was voted a captain his first year here, obviously. What have you seen from him? What do you think the other players have seen from him to, give him that honor?
Yeah, he's I've been fortunate. I've been around some pretty special guys in my coaching career. Guys that I've specifically coached, guys that, I've been, the Derek Brookses, the John Lynches, the Eric Weddles. I've been able to be around guys like that. And DeShawn is in that mold. He really is. He is an absolute professional in the way that he works and the way that he handles himself in the meeting room. You can see that he's always, he's taking notes. He's always talking ball out on the field. He's always discussing things. If something does happen in practice, when the first group goes out, he's not over there just sitting on a cooler. He's, grabbing the guys talking, hey, what happened? What was the breakdown? So I would classify him as a guy that's totally into ball, 100%. And the thing that's great about that, when your marquee, star players are like that, it's infectious, and the other guys go, God dang, look how DeShawn, acts. Look how he's into it. As veterans, as a young guy, as Kaishan Jarrett, to sit there and see a veteran act like that and prepare like that and go about his day on a daily basis, whether it's in the weight room, whether it's in the meeting room, whether it's on the practice field, it's impressive. So he's been phenomenal.
Coach, when you look at the Dolphins, and specifically Ryan Tannehill, some of the challenges that he presents.
Yeah, the thing that I've been most impressed about him is that he is, I think as a coach, when you look at a player, whether it's your own player, you view other players, especially with young guys, you look for them for a progression. You look for them to get better year in and year out. And when you really look at, the year that he had last year compared to the year before, he had 28 touchdowns. He had 12, only threw 12 picks, threw for 4,100 yards. I think he was right at about a 93 quarterback rating, you know, and I can't remember the previous year's stats, but they were all improvements, you know. So he's very good, you know. He can make all the throws, and the thing that I think is the most dangerous thing, he can run. You know, it's one thing when a quarterback can drop back and sling it, but when a quarterback can drop back and sling it and take off, it adds a whole nother dimension. So he's a very good young football player in this league. And like I said, the thing to me that's been most impressive, every year he's improved. So,
Joe, what specifically have you seen out of Jackson Jeffcoat? You know, guy kind of gets new life, unfortunately, when Junior goes down, but he gets in games and he just makes plays.
Yeah, and really, he didn't wait around to play good once, you know, Junior got hurt. I mean, Jackson had a phenomenal offseason. The last 5 months, I was very impressed with him through OTAs, you know, and he was in. The thing that's cool is that training camp is about competition, you know, and you hope you get to the level where guys are competing their butts off for those roster spots. And he did, you know, and competition is all about showing what you got. And he proved it that he can make plays, and he did make plays. Every week he made plays. He'd make plays every day on the practice field. So I'm proud of him. And, you know, typical coach, I tell him all the time that, you know, he hadn't done anything yet, you know, but he really has. He rose to the challenge and competed and truly earned a spot on this team. And he's gonna make plays for us. There's no doubt about it.
Back to DeShawn Goldson. I mean, he went first team All-Pro in 2012 to, you know, honestly a guy that Tampa Bay, you know, paid a lot of money to let him go this year. Is he playing like a guy who has something to prove?
Yeah, and again, I didn't know him before, so I obviously knew of him. You know, he had a as you said, had a decorated career. And quite honestly, I did not watch one snap of DeShawn Goldson at Tampa Bay. Now, over the years, we watch every game, we say, but it wasn't like I sat down and, you know, watched every one of his games last year before he signed him. DeShawn Goldson's a dang good football player. I had no idea he was the type of guy that he is, the type of leader that he is. So I really don't know. You'd have to ask him as far as I don't think he's built that way, that he thinks he has to come out and prove anything. He just loves playing the game. He loves preparing. And as I said before, he's phenomenal as far as a leader. That's the thing that I've been really impressed with. And I just think that's the way he is, you know.